Well, we're now going to cross to our Washington studio to talk more about the politics behind the U.S. decision to send more troops to Afghanistan. And there is Dina Guzovsky. Dina.
Hi there, Bill. Well, yes, a lot going on here in the United States. We're talking about the politics. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Robert Gates, General Stanley McChrystal, they've been testifying on Capitol Hill trying to convince Congress about Obama's Afghanistan plans. Now, in the meantime, the commander-in-chief, he's in Norway accepting the Nobel Peace Prize, also acknowledging the irony behind getting this prize while he is escalating the war in Afghanistan. Well, joining me to discuss not only his decision, but also all the surrounding events, columnist Kelly Vlahos. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote an article in which you basically said, look, for the past year or so, the Obama administration has put on an Oscar-worthy performance, sort of taking charge from the backseat of the car. And then you had officials during this decision-making process, some saying that Obama is withering, others are saying, look, let him take his time. But when all was said and done, apparently the generals down there are pretty much going to be doing the same thing they've been doing all along. So the question is, what took so long?
Correct. I think that Obama had put himself in a bind from the get-go. During the 2008 campaign, he had been very strident that Afghanistan was the good war, that the resources needed to go there, that we had been distracted in Iraq. And so when he came into office, he was basically tasked with fighting this war, but at the same time showing the restraint that he had also had campaigned on. So he goes into the war. Meanwhile, you have a military establishment, a community, that is basically bent on doing counterinsurgency the way it was done in Iraq. And so the drumbeat had already begun from the beginning that we needed more troops in Iraq. We need more of a presence, more concentration in the hot spots to really dig in and basically rout out the Taliban remaining al-Qaeda. So Obama was in the position from the get-go to sort of listen to the generals. And I think that he had, and I like to use this word, others have too, had been bullied by the military establishment to go forward with an escalation.
Well, when you mention being bullied, it seems like it's not just all about talk, because you said that this strategy was a foregone conclusion. Can you elaborate on that, taking into consideration, the Pentagon's budget, the expansion of airspaces, these contractor bids that have now been accepted?
I think from the get-go, you could see that the escalation was hardwired. Back in January of 2009, the budgets were already in the hopper for expanding the bases, building new bases. The Bagram airfield is being expanded. There's numerous, at least 8 forward operating bases that are being expanded or built. We still do not know how many there are. There are at least $5 billion worth of construction money going into Afghanistan now just for the construction of airfields, bases, to accommodate not only the troops that are in there now, but an escalation that we didn't know about until a few weeks ago.
Right, but don't we also have to consider that the money is not just going to U.S. personnel down there, but it's being the money is going into Afghanistan itself. So does this mean that the war could continue for much longer than we anticipated, even if Barack Obama does start pulling out troops by that date of July 2011? We have to consider these other ramifications, the other outlying things of this war.
Well, I think at this point, there will be at least 200,000 either contractors or coalition personnel in Afghanistan. To get them out of there in 18 months would be impossible, but yet we're already hearing signals that that is a soft deadline, that there are plans to keep a number of troops in there for training purposes, for reconstruction. So we're talking about a long, protracted occupation at this point, which I believe was hardwired from the beginning. It's just Obama was tasked with trying to sell this to the American public while pleasing his generals in Washington.
Right. You also spoke to military analysts who said that, look, if these war plans were revealed before Obama made his speech under any other president, the generals would be fired, they would be reprimanded. Why didn't Obama address this? Or maybe he did behind closed doors. But is this also a case where if you have a battle between the White House versus the Pentagon's always going to come out on top?
Well, not always. I think in this case, Obama, again, was at a disadvantage. He was coming in inexperienced in military affairs. There was an entire military establishment that was ready to do counterinsurgency. And there was leaks along the way to the media about the need for more troops, what the generals want. You had members of Congress, senators, standing up in front of microphones saying, why isn't the president listening to his commanders on the ground? So they lost control, the White House lost control of the narrative, and which put him at a grave disadvantage where the military looked stronger and
he perhaps had to maybe make this decision. I want to thank you so much for being here and for your time. Bill, I'm going to throw it back to you, but here we have Kelly saying, look, there are politics behind this military decision over there in Afghanistan.
Interesting discussion there, Dina. Thanks very much indeed. Dina Guzowski talking to writer Kelly Vlahos live in our Washington studio. Thanks a lot.